So today, or all this month in the Centers for Spiritual Living, the theme is where humanity meets divinity. And today specifically, I get to talk about the power of the heart, right? How God speaks to the heart. That's actually like the physical point in our body meeting the spiritual life, right? There's a physical point that does that. Now, we have been taught that the heart is a blood-pumping organ, right? We're taught that our emotions, our feelings, they're not as important as developing a serious mental intellect, right? To be a critical thinker. So we are not taught about the power of the heart in school. But all throughout time, there are a lot of stories and teachings about the wisdom that comes from the heart. And one of my very favorite stories is about King Solomon. That King Solomon is doing such a good job as a king that God appears to Solomon and says, I am so proud of you. I want to gift you anything that you desire. So Solomon thought about this, and he decided to ask for the gift of an understanding heart. So he said, Lord, grant me an understanding heart. And the Lord said, I would have given you great power if you had asked. I would have given you great riches if you had asked. But you asked for an understanding heart, so I will give you an understanding heart. But because you have an understanding heart, you will also have great power and great riches. This is because from an understanding heart, we tap into wisdom that allows us to open to be such good receivers, to hear our divine instruction. So the heart is powerful. King Solomon also said, keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are all the issues of life. Now the ancient people believed we thought from the heart. But this is where we made our decisions, right? And we know, of course we know we feel from right here, and all of our issues have to do with how we feel about them, right? If we don't feel good about something, we have an issue with it, right? So our issues really do come from the heart. Now, the ancient people believed that the heart held the wisdom of this world and an inner world that was a doorway into divine knowledge. Within the Buddhist tradition, they teach about finding the hidden treasure of the heart, which is that it is a vast universe within itself. In the Bible, the heart is mentioned 878 times. And in Native American traditions, there's a teaching that if you want to receive wisdom, you will ask from the heart to receive from the heart. Now, in the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which was originally called the Book of Emerging Forth into the Light. Did anybody know that? That's a beautiful name of a book, right? Oh, I'm reading the Book of Emerging Forth into the Light. But anyway, in this book, it outlines a ceremony in which the Egyptian god Anubis weighs the heart of the recent dead. And he puts it in one of those scales, right, like that goes like this. So he puts the heart in one side, and he puts the feather of divine truth on the other side. Now, if the heart and the feather weigh the same, that person gets to move forward into the light. However, if the heart, over here, if the heart is burdened with despicable acts, making choices that harm themselves or another, it would weigh heavier than the feather of divine truth. Anubis would feed the heart along with the body of that person to a hungry beast who sat with him, waiting. So that's how they handled that. So the ancient people, they knew a truth about the heart that we are just coming to understand right now, that the heart has power beyond pumping blood. Okay, beyond pumping blood. So here's some science stuff. When a woman gets pregnant, the first tiny little group of cells that appears are heart cells. They are what is going to form the heart. And the baby forms around it. Now, from that little group of cells, there's an energy field that comes out from it. Right? This field grows into our heart's magnetic field. And our heart's magnetic field is so big that if you go like this, you cannot touch the edge of your heart's field. Okay? Something else very interesting discovered by the Heart Math Institute. The heart has its own intelligence. There's a little brain in the heart. A little brain in the heart. Now, we all know that the big brain commands the body. It tells things inside of us to do things, right? Now, when the heart receives a command from the brain, it has the option to decide if it wants to do that or not. It does not have to act on the command of the brain. But the heart also commands things within our body. Now, if the heart gives the brain a command, our brain does not have the option to choose. The brain has to say yes at your command. Okay, so the brain has to say yes. There's actually a new field in the field of medicine called neurocardiology. So that's like brain heart, right? I think. Now, within our philosophy, we hear about the heart a lot. That Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Now, that's implying being in a special space of the heart, right? To be able to see and feel and hear and receive divine instruction. We've heard the law is written in our hearts, the truth is in our hearts, wisdom and understanding are in our hearts. Ernest Holmes says, the heart is the center of divine love. Love, well, that we know, love is the self-givingness of spirit. It is the urge to create, to express itself in terms of creation, right? So love is the urge to express through us. There's a lot of activity going on right here, right? Activity that we haven't thought of. There's a lot of information. There is spiritual movement that's moving through our heart all the time. Now, physically, this is where we meet our divine self. So I talked about the heart can give commands, right? The heart can give the brain commands, and the brain has to say yes. Now, this is really important to us because of how we interact with spirit in our daily life. Now, we interact in two ways. We are putting out information, what we desire, right? We do this in prayer form, affirmative prayer, or the creative process, or we're saying our affirmations. But we're feeling something and we are putting it out there into divine mind, right? So we're putting something out, but then we are also receiving instruction on how to act to bring that into our life. Now, if we are having a hard time getting into a prayerful space, what do? Right? We want our heart to command our brain. Now, I've had the experience of moving into affirmative prayer, but I have been really down or despairing, and so this is what my affirmative prayer might sound like. Okay, I know source is everywhere present, and that I'm an emanation of that. God works through me, for me, as me, even in all my problems that I've created. And at that point, I might just be like, just have to come back to it, because I cannot get into that feeling. And I'll wait. I'll just wait. I'll put it off. I'll hope it passes. But in that moment, I'm really not able to do anything for myself. I'm not able to receive. I'm not able to put into divine mind what it is I'm seeking. Right? Instead, I'm feeling bad, and I just feel like I stay stuck there. So, sometimes we do get into that space where we feel like we're despairing, right? And maybe we're grieving. And so everywhere around our life, we're seeing evidence of our problem. And so it can get hard to get into that affirmative prayer space. Now, we can use our heart to command the brain to get us into the right space, because it's the brain that keeps us stuck in focusing on our problem. It's the brain that keeps us from accessing the level of consciousness that we want to get into for affirmative prayer, right? For the creative process. It's the brain that does that. And we want the heart to command it, because the heart never has awareness of problems. The heart only sees potential, opportunities, bigger options, brighter experiences. The heart sees how we can move into the next brightest version of ourselves. Well, the brain keeps us stuck, right? Our fearful mind keeps us stuck. So, This is how we get the heart to command the brain. We recognize that we're centered either in our fearful mind or love, okay? Centered in the heart. Now, if we are centered in the fearful mind, that will not feel good. We'll feel shame. We'll feel like a failure. We'll feel like nothing works out. We'll feel like a victim. Now, this doesn't feel good because it's not natural to our divine nature, right? It's not a natural part of our soul. Now, when we are centered in the heart, we will feel love, compassion, joy, bliss, enthusiasm, excitement, ready for adventure. This feels so good to us because it is a natural part of our divine nature. It's natural to us, so it feels good to be in it. Now, for our heart to command our brain, we need to get into those heart-centered feelings, right? Now, I just said how hard it can be. Like for me, if I'm really down, it can be really hard to get into affirmative prayer. However, getting into heart-centered feelings can actually be pretty easy. And because I know I've tried this, right? I felt really despairing, and I've tried this exercise. So we're going to do this exercise in just a second. But what happens is when we get heart-centered, we create what's called coherence. Okay, coherence, heart-brain coherence. Now this is powerful, again, because it's the mind that buys into limitation and failure. It's the heart that sees our truth and possibilities. Now, when we're heart-centered, the heart commands the brain to get in alignment with it, to get in alignment with the joy, the enthusiasm, right? The cheer, the optimism, the goodness. The heart commands it. The brain cannot say no. The brain cannot say, yeah, but what about? It just has to say yes. That's its only option. All right, so I'm going to describe a really simple way to get into heart-brain coherence, all right? And this will only take us about a minute. But I want you to imagine or think of an old memory where you were really happy. And this memory can be old. When I first tried this exercise, I was actually so depressed I was bawling, okay? And I accessed a memory that was maybe 10 years old. Okay, so think of a memory where you were so happy, where the event was so beautiful. And now I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to immerse yourself in that memory. Really feel the memory. Feel the goodness. Feel the happiness. Okay, feel the good things that were happening. Then I want you to say out loud, thank you.
Thank you.
Now I want you to say out loud, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, now, still in your memory, I want you to ask Source, Spirit, God, I want you to ask it to amp up the good feelings 10 times. Amp it up 10 times. Say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. Now, I probably took 5 minutes to do this exercise at my worst that I ever had to try to get out of that bad feeling, right? Maybe 5 minutes. Now, when we get heart-centered, it changes us, right? And how we are able to communicate our desires and receive instruction. See, we're creating our life through our feelings. It's all happening through feelings, right? Thoughts plus feelings equal manifestation. Because first we have a thought. Now that thought is going to produce a feeling. Whatever we are feeling most of the time is what we're putting into divine mind. This is the idea behind pray without ceasing, right? Feeling is the prayer, right? And I learned this from Greg Braden, his book, The Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer. Such a good book. He's been featured in the Science of Mind magazine, right? But feelings are the prayer. So what are we feeling most of the day? That's going into divine mind, which has to have a corresponding physical expression in our life. That's the law. There has to be a corresponding physical expression in alignment with those feelings, right? However those feelings are. Now we get heart-centered. Now we're ready to communicate our desires, right? To do affirmative prayer, to do the creative process. Now, if we're fearful, if we're centered in fear, that affirmative prayer might start off like, I want to go to Europe. I want to take a 6-month sabbatical. I want to go over there. I want to write a book. I want to experience other cultures. But that might be really hard. Oh gosh, I have a job. What am I supposed to do about my bills? Okay, maybe I'll drive to Palm Springs next Saturday and do some shopping instead. So what happens is, from a fearful mind, we go from desiring the brightest version of something to a third or a fourth-rate version of that. Right? We don't even give Spirit a chance, right, to start working on that for us. We say, this is what I want. Oh, never mind. I think that would be too hard. When we are centered in the heart, we put that desire into Spirit. I would love to experience a 6-month sabbatical in Europe. The brain says, or the heart says, okay, brain, get in line with this. What are we going to do? Let's receive divine instruction. Okay? So there's the difference when we start off our creation process. When we start off thinking about what we want. We're centered in fear. We're getting a minuscule version. Okay, what we truly desire. When we're centered in the heart, we're getting the brightest version. So now we've put it out there into divine mind. Now we have to receive instruction. Right now, we receive instruction through the visioning process, through meditation, through receiving intuitive guidance. If we're centered in fearful mind, what will happen is we'll receive that instruction, right? And it might sound like, join a meetup group of people who've traveled to Europe. You'll get some good information from them, right? But then your fearful mind is like, whoa, I don't like meetup. I would have to drive to Orange County for that meetup. I don't even think I think my partner wouldn't even really like me going to Europe. So right away, in fearful mind, no matter the instruction we receive from Spirit, in fearful mind, we have every excuse to why we can't act on that. Every excuse. Now, when we are centered in the heart, we receive that divine instruction. We trust it. We act on it. We know there's that within which knows what to do, how to do it, and it compels us to act on what it knows. So we do it. Even though, our divine instruction usually takes us out of our comfort zone. Because whatever it is we're greatly desiring, if it's not here right now, it's outside of our comfort zone. So our divine instruction has to take us out of the comfort zone to go get it. Right? To meet it, to draw it to us. We have to meet it halfway. We can't meet it inside our comfort zones. We have to step out. Right? So we, heart-centered, we receive the big directives and we act on those directives because we know we can. We know if it's been done, it can be done. Right? And there is that within that will make sure it happens. Right? So remember, thoughts and feelings equal manifestation. If we're in a fearful mind, limited mind, our thoughts might be like, oh, I wouldn't be any good at that. That would be really hard. Which turns into our feelings of, I'm ashamed that I won't even try it. I'm such a failure. Which then becomes our experience. Right? More experience of failing at something or feeling ashamed because we didn't try. When we're heart-centered, we feel excited. Right? We feel the possibilities. We feel the options that are available to us. We see all those opportunities. That turns into feelings of enthusiasm, right? Of joy, of cheer. That's what starts expressing in our life, right? Thoughts plus feelings equal manifestation. Greg Braden is the author of many books. This is from his book, Fractal Time. Hi. He says, a change in the way we feel about ourselves and our world has the potential to affect the world itself. And how we feel about ourselves and the world, we change the world, right? We can affect the world. So that's what we're here for, right? We're here to change the world. We're here to be the brightest version of ourselves at any moment, right? Now, when we're the brightest version of ourselves, that affects the person next to us, right? That affects the people in our lives. Now, I said the heart has a magnetic field, right? Right? Remember that? The heart has a magnetic field. Right now, you were sitting in somebody else's magnetic field too, right? That's okay. Right? We're all friends here. But do you know the planet also has a series of magnetic fields? It has a series of them. There's the geomagnetic field, There's the ionosphere. There's a bunch of ions in the ionosphere, right? But it makes up the atmosphere. Lynn McTaggart says that human health and behavior is linked to changes in these fields. So changes in the magnetic fields around the planet actually affect us, right? And if you've ever heard of like cosmic weather, solar radiation, all that stuff, it can affect us. It can change the barometric pressure physically. We might feel not so great, okay, but it does affect us. But in 2001, scientists noticed something about how we affect the magnetic sphere around the planet. There are satellites orbiting our planet right now, a lot of them, but some of them just measure the activity of the magnetic field. And it basically just looks like, on a piece of paper, it's just kind of a chart, right? But kind of like a heartbeat or something, right? But it's just a chart of this, right? And scientists will periodically, they look over it. Well, one day they were looking over this chart and they saw this. Huge spike. They looked at the date. They looked at the time. It was September 11. It was 9/11. About 15 minutes after the first plane hit the tower. Collectively, humanity felt a heartache like has never happened. And it affected the magnetics of the planet, right? It affected our planet. There was another spike that happened like that before, on the day that Princess Diana was killed. That collectively we experienced heartbreak. Okay, we affect the planet collectively together. Can you imagine? Like right now, collectively, if we're all centered in that heart space, what kind of energy are we putting outside of this building right now? Right? That's why when there's mass meditation movements, while the meditations are going on, it can affect the crime rate in the city. Right? Actual mass meditation can affect crime rate and lower it. I should say it lowers it. There are a lot of Native American prophecies about the end of the world, right? And the end of the world is seen as where we just move into such a space. We're stuck in our brain all the time. We're choosing from fear. We're choosing from ego. And this causes more suffering. But the Hopi Indians, they actually have something called a prophecy rock. And I'm not sure if the story is carved into the rock or if it's painted, but there are two tracks that humanity can take on this rock. One is heart-centered, where if they choose from the heart, if they choose love and compassion, there is love and abundance in their life, collectively. If they choose to only come from the mind and fear, they take the lower consciousness path. And there's fear and suffering in that choice. And so this prophecy rock has actually been called a map of consciousness. So they saw, if we're choosing from love, we're experiencing a brighter life. If we're choosing from fear, we're bringing more suffering into our experience. Now what's interesting is in this picture of these two paths, from the lower level of consciousness, there's a ladder. At any time, we can get into that level of consciousness that is from the heart. At any time, we can do that. That is the power of the heart. That is the power of the heart. Within the heart, we have the power to create the life that we desire. It affects how we communicate into spirit what we desire. It affects how we hear the instruction that we get back. Right? It affects it. When we are in the heart, there are no opposing forces in our experience, right? We won't experience any opposing forces. The heart gets the brain into line with it. It gets it into sync. The brain cannot give all those great excuses that we're so familiar with, right? When we're heart-centered, the heart commands the brain what to do to get us where we want to be. Okay, the heart commands.